Hello. Hello. Believe you can all hear me. I hope you can. Let's see. There we go. Hello, hello, hello. Hope this isn't too loud. Hang on. It's picking up a lot. Let me turn this down a little bit. All right. Hello. Let's see. Charlie, that's me. Hello, Joni be good? Joni be good? Galaxy Puck, what's up? Alright. Let me make sure I get this all ready. It should be good. Okay. Turn this down a little bit more. Okay, cool. So, today we are going to talk about spoiler stuff and some GP announcements and all that good stuff. So we'll switch over here real quick. Let me see. Perfecto. Do I have... I do. Okay. Okay. Damn, GPs were announced. They were announced today. So we're going to talk about them in the brief amount that we have. So we got our GP announcements. Yes, much excite indeed. So the first, I believe they're all online. So it says GP Online 2022 will be held in North America. So I'm assuming these are all going to be online events. I don't think these are any in-person events. That doesn't mean we won't have any in-person events. We might not, but there might also be in-person events in addition to these online events. So we had 4 announced already. So we have 2 that are actually on back-to-back weekends, and they're both new frontiers. So one is March 5th and 6th, which is coming up in about a month, about 28 days. And then we have one the weekend after on March 12th and 13th. Both are new frontiers format. They'll both be with Game of Gods Reloaded. So they'll both be with the next set. So we'll have 2 GPs kind of like right after the set comes out, because I believe the set comes out on the 25th of February, and I believe this is like pretty much the exact next weekend. Hoping we get online GPs this year too. These are online GPs. Forcible Grand Prix Online 2022. I believe all 4 of these are online events. Stream should be going. I can check my bitrate real quick. I might be lagging. Let's see. That is not what I wanted. Remind me later. My bitrate seems fine, so it might be on your end. But I'll keep an eye on it. We'll see. It could very well be me. But anyway, I believe these are all online events, so we'll have these 4. The first event is only 25 USD. The second event is going to be 35 USD. However, the second event, if we look down here, is going to be a cash event, right? So first place will get 250, second place 150, third and fourth get paid out 50 each. So it'll be a cash event for the one on the 12th and the 13th, which is why it's a little bit more expensive as well. So we'll have those. Let's see. I'll miss the traveling and meeting with fellow players of the Cape game in person. Yes. Traveling is the best part. There you go. First one is probably Cartamagica, is what would have been Vegas. Oh, that, yeah, potentially. Yeah, them being on like back-to-back weekends is a little bit weird, but yeah, I can see that. If they're run by 2 different TOs. And then we have April 16th and 17th, so the month after, about a month after. That'll still be in the same format, so that'll be with Game of Gods Reloaded. It won't have the 3rd set out yet, I'm pretty sure. We just got Game of Gods Reloaded a little bit quicker because Game of Gods, the first set, was delayed initially. So, this should still just be set 2, and this will be Wandere, my favorite anime trope. Not a format, an anime trope. It'll be Wander. So it'll be a Wanderer event. April 16th and 17th, so we'll have that. And then the next one was announced for like late in September, so that I'm not even like thinking about that one. It's not even on like my radar. We also got the prize information. So we got the information for the March ones, I believe. Yeah. So the information for the March ones came out. So for all players entry for the first one, this is March 5th and 6th, you get, I'm assuming it's one copy of these duets. It's one of each duet color, and then Angel of False Life, I believe. Yeah, that's the False Life one. Top 32 gets number 13 promo, and then top 8 gets this Uber Nyarlathotep. And then plates for the top 3, they're question marks. I'm assuming that's just because they don't have the images for the plates. They're probably Nyarlathoteps. They tend to be the same ruler. My poor wallet makes me think there might be some ones between April and September in person, like they left a gap to have events based on COVID status. Yeah, that I would believe that too. That's why I think there will probably also be like in-person stuff. And then the March 12th and 13th one, instead of Angel of False Life, you get Angel of False Glory, and then you get Necronomicon Barrier for top 32, and then still Nyarlathotep, still the duets. I really like the duet art. Like the art, promo art's always been great for FAO for the most part. It's just unfortunate that only like 2 of the duets ever really saw play, and I think not many of them see play right now. I think maybe just Duet of Darkness. But we'll see. But yeah, very cool. Very cool that we have events. Very, very cool. But yeah. So I'll probably... I plan on doing like a full set review for Game of Gods Reloaded. I'll probably also do like on what to expect going into whatever, or what I would expect, what I would bring to each of these events, etc., etc. And I'll probably release all that really super quick because the event will be very quick after the set gets released. Wish the 6SS had been a promo, but those duets are beautiful. I also think 6 Sage Stone should have been a promo if, you know, they're not going to ban it, but it is what it is. But yeah, so very cool. Very cool that we have those. Looking forward to them. But yeah, so I'm going to talk about our spoilers today. I haven't given my thoughts in video form on any of the spoilers that we have had so far. So I will be going through all... This says 43. 2 of them are the promos. However, we did get 2 today that James hasn't updated yet, I'm pretty sure. So it will be 43 cards. Are we going to discuss BDSM scores? Not on this stream. Not on this stream. That is for our guild only. But Atticus, thank you for the subscription. I appreciate the support. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But so I'm just going to go through them on Force of Wind online. Mr. James Mount's website that he uses, and his database that he has. He's also in the process of making a deck builder for this website. Use this. It's a wonderful database. But they're just in here. All the cards are just listed by color and then alphabetically. So I won't really be going in them in the order they were spoiled, but with the context in which we know of some of the cards, I will give my thoughts on them for the archetype. And we'll just go one by one. I'll click on it to enhance it, so we can actually see all of it. Killing it on the database, yeah, he is doing a fantastic job. But yeah, so first card, getting into it, Fragment of... Oh, we can... Oh, God. 125. There we go. All right. A Fragment of Omniscient Power. So, single light will, quick cast, draw a card, Force Resonance Genesis. So if you're Alice, if you spent, you get this effect. If you spent a will produced by a Regalia you control to play this card, draw 2 cards instead. So Alice already has a bunch of card draw, like a bunch of value, like inherently within her kit. So card draw isn't something she's missing. Like, for example, like Kaguya did not have a lot of card draw within her kit. She had a lot of like cancels and like 1-for-1 plays, but not a lot of value. So, however, Alice does have a lot of value. So just adding on more value isn't really great for her. The other thing is there are ways currently that we know of to get more will off of Alice's Regalia, but typically in the early stages of the game, you're only going to be up 1 additional will with your Regalia plays. So using that will on this card in order to just get 2 more cards, so it's only +1 in actual value, isn't that great. And value and force of will is powerful, but only if it's attached to other types of either cards, effects, or like disruption, right? So like, for example, like one of the best quote unquote value cards would be something like Melfi. 2 mana, you play her, you get your mana back, so she's 0 mana, and then you draw a card. So she's net neutral on cards in hand, but she's also a body in play, so she's technically +1. If that makes sense. So stuff like that, right? And because it's instead, if this said, like, draw 2 additional cards, like you were drawing 3 off of this, maybe that would be playable. That's, like, really good, because that's, like, a lot of value, but just +1, like, inherent card value isn't that great. So I don't think you'll play this card in Alice. Alice enters the Game of Gods. Okay, so Alice and everyone got an Enters the Game of Gods in both this set and the past set, except for Nyarlathotep because of the lore. So Alice's Enters the Game of Gods. They're all 1 mana. Quick cast. You can choose an attribute. If you don't control a Regalia of that attribute, her mechanic, you put it into the field. Basically, Alice can have like 5 Regalia. Again, there are ways to get more than 5 Regalia. However, you'll typically only have 5 Regalia. And then you draw a card. Target J Resonator loses all abilities until end of turn. If you're Alice, that's what Force Resonance Genesis is, you can choose both instead. So if you're Alice, it replaces itself, it gives you a Regalia for you to use, and then you get to blank a card until end of turn. A J Resonator, I should say. Blanking hasn't been incredibly prevalent in a bit. Part of the reason for that is a lot of the stuff either has barrier or it doesn't really have like in-play effects. Like a lot of FOW effects are really good because of their like enter effects, like the immediate impact that they have. Like to imagine it's like noon, maybe 1 p.m. for her. It's probably midnight. She just woke up. She's about to head on out. But so blanking effects have lost like a lot of their power over time. We're not really in like a super suit 1 card that like doesn't have barrier or protection and then like punch your opponent with it. So that the blanking effect just loses a lot of inherent value. Being able to create a Regalia is nice for her, so you will probably end up playing this card. It'll just also have that blanking tacked onto it, which isn't bad, right? Like, again, blanking has just gotten worse. It is not bad, right? Want to make that perfectly clear. There are some situations where blanking a card is really great, like Atomic Bahamut in Violet, right? They try to attack you before they enter battle, you blank it loses swiftness, right? So stuff like that. Like there are relevant scenarios for blanking cards. And the fact that it goes value neutral, right? You draw a card off of it. So not a fantastic card, but not a bad card. It is also playable off of Charlotte, Inheritor of the 7th Power, or whatever. So you can play 1 in your sideboard, you get free Regalia off of it as like a will sink in Alice, which is primarily light mana. So it has its functions. Main deck wise, I don't know, maybe you main deck like 2 of it, if that. Depends how, again, prevalent blanking is, depends how prevalent getting Regalia is. Do I want to talk about her right now? I'll talk about Ayu right now. It's fine. Okay. Okay, so what has become abundantly clear with how these cards are shaping up and how order is shaping up is going second is super powerful. A lot more powerful than going first. Going first is only powerful if you hit 6 Sage Stone, which will happen approximately 40% of the time when you call your stone in an order deck. The reason for that is being able to get your order onto cards and get their revolution effects. So, Ayu is one of the safest revolution cards possible into open mana. So what do I mean by that? What do I mean by safest? So when I've talked about like other decks, right? We've seen stuff like Nyarlathotep, other order decks, right? We've seen stuff like Nyarlathotep. We have seen stuff like Kaguya, right? And we talk about turn 1 Hanzo. We talk about turn 1 kill you with Nyarlathotep through like Red Wine and Bread into Red Riding Hood into stuff like that, right? So though the issue with the Nyarlathotep play was that if Red Wine and Bread got stopped, or Red Riding Hood died, or Red Wine and Bread died, or other things got stopped, there were a lot of pieces that could be stopped to make sure that you didn't die. Every deck, every order deck, and every meta-relevant deck had a way to deal with turn 1 Red Wine and Bread. Every deck had a way to deal with it. So it wasn't a quote-unquote safe play, because if you went all in like that, you were going to start being down mana, down cards, and just in a much worse position generally, because you couldn't order. Same kind of thing with like Kaguya, right? So turn 1 Hanzo. Hanzo's protection came from producing the moon, using the moon in order to produce the will to activate Hanzo's effect in order to go will positive. That was how Hanzo worked, right? However, you could kill Hanzo in response to the order. You could cancel his his automatic effects in order to get the mana back, like stuff like that, right? Okay. So, why is Ayu safe? Why is she a safe turn 1 play? It's because her stuff is so spread across multiple like avenues. So what happens is when you order Ayu, and this is in Alice, right? This isn't in like other decks. This is specifically in Alice. You order her. When you order her, you will get 2 will off of her enter, 2 light will to use as you please. You'll get a Regalia off of Alice, right? And then that Regalia, if Ayu is alive, will produce mana. Similar to how Hanzo works. Okay, so that's her on Revolution. In addition, Alice also draws you a card when you rev her, or you flip her or whatever. When Alice becomes her order, you also draw a card in addition to producing a Regalia. Okay, so if you do that, what does Feathsing, the best turn 1 cancel for automatic effects, or the new card, which I'll get into later, do against this? You have 2 options. One, you can cancel the automatic effect of Alice, which I guess would be Ayu's because Ayu gets the card text, but you cancel the Regalia effect, so they don't have a Regalia, they don't draw a card. However, now they still have Ayu, and they get 2 free light will to do with as they please, and you are out of mana and cannot do anything for the rest of your turn. If you cancel the produce 2 light will, same kind of concept. They get a Regalia, they draw a card, which will replace the Ayu value-wise, and then they also have 1 floating mana in order to use on your turn. Okay? They're also calling a stone, by the way, so they'll have 2 mana. Keep that in mind. They'll have 2 additional mana. Third, you kill the Ayu in response to both of her activated effects. This is honestly the best option, like hands down, because if you kill her in response, the order will go back. They'll get a Regalia, but they won't be able to produce any will off of it. They can't re-rev, so they can't like play another Ayu to get the will production. They'll have their stone, so they'll have 1 of whatever mana they get in order to play on your turn, but then they'll have to use 2 Light Will immediately on their turn. So they get 2 Light Will hits of whatever they want to do. However, they'll have 1 mana effectively going into your turn. But still, with that being like potentially the best counter option for her, she is ridiculously powerful. Being able to order her on 1 is insane value. And like this is going off of the coin. If you hit 6 Sage Stone on 1 and you rev her, if they kill her, you won't have any mana into your opponent's turn 2, but you will still have the 2 other Light Will that you produced, which, if you play Flute, the Light Mana Dork can give you light mana into your opponent's turn. So you can still set up more mana into your opponent's turn by playing Ayu. Okay? In addition, if Ayu lives, you can sync 1 of that Light Will into her draw a card effect. And if you use the other Light Will to play a Flute, you can then sync that Flute's Light Will in order to draw another card on your opponent's turn. Because it's a once a turn effect. Capiche? Are we seeing the play lines for why Ayu is broken? Why this card is absurdly powerful, and why you almost always play it on turn 1 if you can order it. You're right, you could play 2 Flute. Ayu is very strong for Alice. Very strong for Alice. And I wrote her off initially. I was like, wow, this card is dog shit. And then I like kept reading her, and then I like read Alice, and then I thought of her playline implications, and oh my god. She is so good. So good. So good. And then she's also your win con. Like, she's just your win con. And in addition to being your win con, you can get her back with my favorite light card from the previous set, Keep the Faith. So with Keep the Faith, you can just res her and kill your opponent if you hit your Exodia Regalia setup, which isn't hard, by the way. There are so many cards that produce Regalia. She's very powerful. Very powerful. Alice might be strong enough to be competitive, which it's been a while since we've had a competitive Alice. I think Dark Alice, like Rabbit Princess. 1-drop Dark Alice, Rabbit Princess was like the last competitive Alice, I think. But very strong card. Very, very strong card. So that's Ayu. Ayu's little friend. Draws a card, replaces himself, choose an attribute, target Regalia becomes the chosen attribute until end of turn. So I don't like this card, but at the same time, I think it's a necessary evil in the deck. This is the card that allows you to get multiple Regalia of like the same color, basically. Because like I can tap this, make a like a water Regalia I made into a light one, which Ayu can use to produce will or whatever, and then I can make another water Regalia, and then it'll go back to my turn. I have 2 water Regalia, etc., etc. Or you can make your light Regalia something else, make another light Regalia, it comes back, you have more will off of Ayu, right? Like, that's just functionally how this card works. So it sets up your ability to play more than 5 Regalia. It also replaces itself. Its stat line is, like, pretty typical for a 1-drop. So, I mean, its setup is nice. It being net value 0 card-wise, but then +1 on a body. Again, it's nice. You'll probably play it in some form in the Alice deck, potentially, just because, again, it lets you have more Regalia production. And we've seen, outside of Alice's order, I think 2 cards that produce Regalias, maybe 3. We'll see as we go through this. But, because this one produces Regalia, and this one produces Regalia. And then Alice produces Regalia. So, it's okay. I think you play it. But you don't play it like outside of the deck, for example. Charlotte, Chasing Light, the SR. So light, quick cast, tails. J Resonators, your opponent control cannot be recovered as long as this card is in the field. Really cool Wanderer implications with Road of the Sacred Queen, which causes all your opponent's J Reses to enter the field rested. So that's interesting. Rest or recovered regalia you control prevent all damage that will be dealt to this card by chance or ability, sharing an attribute with the regalia rested this way until end of turn. I feel like that effect is super hard to pull off a lot of the time. The other thing is just it's damage, it's not destruction. A lot of the times destruction effects are more just actual destruction effects and not like damage based. There are some like Flame of Outer World, but Flame of Outer World is unchaseable, so you would have to preemptively do it, but they could also do it in response, so it's whatever. It has a lot of play lines against like Shiva's cards in particular, because a lot of Shiva's kill stuff is green related, which is really weird to say, but so she has like that kind of implication. It's not great, but it's not, it's like an additional effect. Not great, but not terrible. Revolution, enter, destroy up to X target magic stone effects or entities your opponent controls, where X is the number of regalia you control. Water regalia you control, gain, draw a card. Okay, so Charlotte, if your turn 1 is Ayu and your opponent kills your Ayu, then your turn 2 is probably going to be Charlotte, right? Charlotte will allow you to shoot 2 things, right? Assuming you just produce the 1 regalia off of the Ayu, what's the word I'm looking for? The Ayu, like, order revolution, the Alice effect, right? So you get the additional regalia off of Charlotte, and then, oh, she would actually only be 1 thing, because both enters would go on the chase simultaneously, and because X requires targets, X would have to be declared upon the effect going on to the chase, not on resolution. So you only get 1 pop. So the amount of regalia you have in play at the time the enter goes on to the chase is the amount of pops you're going to get. There's no, like, resolution gaming or anything like that to be done. Just turning on a white real quick. But it's still decent. Like, even 2 mana, like, pop 1 thing, and then you can create a water regalia off of the Alice effect to replace her. Like, she draws a card. Like, that's still decent value, right? And then if your opponent, like again, like Virgil was a really relevant card in the last meta. If your opponent's playing like a Virgil deck, they rested it already to attack you, and then suddenly Charlotte, and then you could, like, Charlotte produce, instead of a water regalia, you can produce a black or a darkness regalia, tap the darkness regalia to prevent any damage that Virgil might potentially shoot Charlotte with. Stuff like that. So she has play lines. I like what she's doing. I think you play her in some capacity in the deck, probably as like a 2 or a 3 of, especially just because water regalia value. But yeah, and quick cast destruction is just like powerful, and it's not reliant on a color of regalia, it's just reliant on the regalia just like type, basically. So Charlotte's really good. Deep Blue Soldier. The Wanderer potential. The Wanderer potential of Alice is very high because she gets 0 mana regalia, which is really funny. And she draws a lot of cards. Deep Blue Soldier. This is one of the other regalia production cards. And then this also recycles itself whenever you order, basically. It also protects all your regalia, which I don't know. I'm very curious about this, because they've created a lot of just kill everything effects, but no, like, Heavenly Gust type effect or regalia break effects or like anything like that hit regalia, just cards that hit entities. So this will have a lot more prevalence, the regalia gaining eternal, in, I believe, Wanderer. We'll see. I don't think regalia destruction is that prevalent in Wanderer, since they're all like 0 mana in the first place. But we'll see about that effect. And then it gives you regalia, and so it's just a way to get regalia as you recycle it, which is nice. It's Deep Blue Soldier is a pretty decent card. I think you only play like 1 or 2 of it. Like, I don't foresee you playing 4 unless regalia production is really, really important. But we'll see. Phantom Beastmaster of Maat. Okay. This card is like pretty absurd. So this card is a 10-11 in stats, right? It is a 10-11 in stats for a single mana at instant speed. And then you can banish 4/4 of your stats to prevent damage that would be dealt to you. So like any burn damage, any Dogra Magra effects, anything like that. Any artillerists, stuff like that, right? So it has built-in protection in addition to a large body for a singular mana at instant speed. This card is very, very powerful. Very powerful. I think you play 4 of it in Alice. We'd have to see the rest of the deck, but I'm pretty sure you play 4 of it. Just because that deck produces so much mana in the first place, like we just talked about how much mana Ayu is giving you on the first turn. If Ayu is not dealt with, you have 4 light mana to work with. Granted, you'll have no will going into your opponent's turn, but you get 2, so you get 2 light will, 1 of whatever your stone produces, which you called, and then 1 of any color. So you have, your turn 1 is so explosive if Ayu is not dealt with. And even if it is dealt with, like, you can just use both of the mana to play this card, and then have, like, 1 extra mana left over, right? Like, there are a lot of play lines to use with it, and this being, like, a damage prevention effect on yourself, in addition to a large amount of stats, is just really powerful. You'd probably play it in some Fallen Angel decks, potentially. Like, I mean, you Judgment Belial, right? Like, you can play this in Belial. You have a Belial in play, this token suddenly is a 6/6 Bane with Drain. Wait, it would be an 8/8 Bane Drain if Belial was flipped. Or you just play it for 2, and it's a 6/6 with Bane, right? Like, it is a very, very powerful card. So I expect it'll see play. If not in Alice and Odin, at least in maybe Fallen Angels or stuff like Belial decks or stuff like that. Very good card. Agony. Mr. Agne. Okay. A singular red mana. Villains. Enter gets 2+1/+1 counters at the end of turn. At end of turn is both players' turns. It is not just your turn. So at the end of every turn, Agony will double the amount of +1/+1 counters on himself. Or herself. Themself. And then Revolution. At the end of your turn, he will deal X damage to your opponent, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters. And then he applies the Revolutions of Rudra. We'll get to Rudra. And it's just a normal... Oh yeah, Phantom Beastmaster. Phantom Beastmaster is probably an insane card in Limited. So, Agony. People have been talking a lot about Agony being like an answer or die card, which is true. Like, you will die if it's not answered. However, it is not inherently powerful. So keep in mind, Shiva's order gives all J resonators you control +2/+2. So if he is revved, which the assumption is he is, because he's not dangerous if he's not revved, just doubling the amount of +1/+1 counters, turning into a large amount of stats over time, Jizo statue-like effects, are not good in the current format. They would be good if we were in a tempo format, but we are not in a tempo format. We are on a cards can be answered on turn 1, and cards need to be answered on turn 1. So the value at which this card plays for is a lot less than it would have played at an older stage of the game. That being said, if it is revved, it is a minimum 6/6 when it enters play, so you'd have to deal 6 to it somehow. As long as it's revved, right? There'll be 2 off of the Shiva, 2 off of it, 2 off of the counters. You double the counters at the end of your turn, and then you burn your opponent. So you'll burn your opponent for 4 at the end of your turn. You'll burn your opponent for 8 at the end of their turn. And then you'll burn them for 16 at the end of your next turn. So if Agony is not answered by the end of your next turn, he will have done, what is that, 2,800 damage to your opponent, and punched them for, he's at 8/8 for 12. So he'll kill your opponent. He will kill your opponent if he is unanswered by the end of your next turn on which he is played. If your opponent's at 4,000 life, right? This is in a your opponent does nothing kind of game state. So he does have that kind of applicability to him. However, he's also red. Who knows if we're getting stones in this set? I didn't look at like the box information or anything like that. If we do have some different kind of stones or anything, maybe red is more prevalent. Otherwise, you're just going to see like Magic Stone of the Six Sages and then Magic Stone of Knowledge primarily being the red sources for Shiva, because Shiva is a green deck and green is an inherently better color in all scenarios than red. So, so you're not really going to be playing Agony early, right? Like that's the thought process. Is Agony's not going to get played early, really. And if he is, we're already in a format where people are able to deal with and are building to deal with threats on the very first turn of the game with your opponent revving them going second. Like you just have to. Like you have to deal with Niar, you now have to deal with Ayu. Other cards. Virgil. It's just morphed into that format. So Agony getting played early, which is where he needs to get played, isn't relevant, and the longer a game goes on, the worse he gets because his stat line is so low. Does that make sense? For the people who are watching? I know I kind of said the same thing over and over again, but I really wanted to get my point across on why I think Agony and Rudra are bad. Like, if I were to build Shiva right now, I would play neither of them. So that is my take on Agony. Okay? I think it's cool. I think the Jizo statue type effect is cool, but I don't think it's good. Cool. Okay, moving on. Dedicated Duel. I already hate it because it's not quick cast. Red. Choose a J-Res with the highest attack among J-Res you control, and a J-Res with the highest attack among J-Res in your opponent control. Destroy all other J-Resonators. It's kind of like Interdimensional Escape. It's not an instant speed. They don't even fight each other afterwards. If there was a Swarm deck, this card would be relevant. If there was a Swarm deck and this card was instant speed, it would be a lot more relevant. But it being at sorcery speed in Shiva, which currently does not have any will production, is not good. So I think this card is hot garbage. That's all I'm gonna say about it. Priscia, Dangerous Duelist. Tails. Swiftness, Pierce, Precision. Okay. Okay, Force of Will. Before I go on to talk about this card, I want to talk about Pierce and Precision existing on the same card. So, Pierce only applies if it hits a blocker. Okay? I'm like 99% sure. We'll even look it up to make sure I'm right. Control F. Pierce. If attack is blocked. Cool. Yep. So, Pierce only goes through if the attacker has been blocked. So if you attack a Resonator that has like 400 defense with Precision, or just like attacking it naturally or whatever, you do not deal 300 damage to your opponent. Unless they choose to block your Priscia. Okay? That's how Pierce works. Pierce requires there to be a blocker. And if they do block it, the Pierce damage goes through to the original attack target. Again, I'm 90% sure. To the original attacked object. Yes. Yeah. So it'll just go through the Resonator. It's not like Trample in Magic. It's a lot different. Similar, but different. Okay. Revolution. Enter whenever this card deals battle damage to your opponent. Choose X times from the following at random, where X is the number of regalia you control. At least it's not tied to the color. I'm glad that they're doing like an automatic effect that isn't tied to the color, and then an active effect that is tied to the color. I think that's... I like that. I like that. 500 to your opponent, or 500 to each J-Res they control. So it's kind of like a board nuke, or you just dome your opponent for a bunch of damage, and then your regalia can shoot stuff. It's like a decent push win con outside of IU. The issue is that you'll really only have the mana with IU, or if you have like Magic Stone with the 6 Sages out. I guess if you're playing against like Tag and you're running Amadeus Crystal because you're light and you get to do that. But you need light mana for IU. It's not terrible. You might play like 1 or 2 of it. That deck has a lot of draw power. It doesn't have like a lot of searching or tutoring, I don't think. At least not at the moment. So, I don't know, you might play it in some capacity, just because, like, I don't know, randomly shooting your opponent for, like, 2k is kind of sick, but would be funny if this determined a game. Yeah, like a random effect determined the game. The other thing is you get this, like, on the same turn, right? Potentially. Because, like, you can just attack your opponent the same turn you, like, enter, so you could get, like, 3 triggers and then, like, 3 more triggers. So... it can deal a lot of damage. It's just an alternate win con outside of IU, which it's nice to have different avenues of win cons. So you're probably like never playing this on 2, but it is nice to have in that capacity. Shiva's Flame Aura. Okay. This card's very good. Its only issue is it doesn't have quick cast, but at the same time, so red and 1, not quick cast. Give AJ Resonator plus 600 and swiftness until end of turn, draw a card. So it replaces itself, and it is free if it targets a Mimi tribe that has not been targeted by Flame Aura or the Wind equivalent Wind Aura. Wind Aura is not as good as Flame Aura, and that is because Flame Aura gives haste. And giving haste to stuff is very good, especially if you're doing it for free. So I can see potentially playing 2 of these, maybe 3, I guess. Kind of depends. I definitely expect Mimi tribes to be played, especially with today's spoilers that we got, which we'll get into. But yeah, I think Shiva's Flame Aura is quite a strong card. So for a normal, at least, or rare normal, yeah. So I think it'll see some play within Shiva. Tiny Dragon, red 1, oh god. Pay 1 less if you control a J-Ruler, so it's 2 mana, with haste flying 6/6, and gains 6/6 as long as you control a J-Ruler. So it's 2 mana, 12/12 with haste and flying. Okay. I want to take you all back. About 4 years, 5 years, when one of the best decks in the format was playing a 12/12 flyer for 1 mana. Multiple of them, mind you. And now that deck is terrible. Now I want you to look at this card and tell me if adding 1 more mana onto it, we can give it swiftness and also make it have a stipulation to it being 2 mana and buff. And I want you to think if this card ever sees play, because I think the answer is no. Like a huge no. If I'm proven wrong, I'm proven wrong. But we're currently playing with 1 mana 40/40s. Your opponent can't play enter effects for the rest of the turn. That's what we're playing with right now. In limited, I think this card is decent in limited. I do not think this card is great in limited. But that is my thing on Tiny Dragon of Maw. It's my opinion. I think he's okay in limited, terrible in constructed. Violet Maria Bella, Chasing Fire. Human Machine. Tails, Swiftness, Flying, Eternal. 5/7. Red, recover her. Play only during your opponent's turn. Red, 200 attack. Red, produce red. The will does not cease. And then enter, you get 2 red. Okay. So Violet and Maria Bella, if it wasn't cute, I wouldn't care about it. That's fair. I'll give you that. It's a very cute card. Okay, so Violet and Maria Bella, there are a couple things with it. Also, very big sag that the normal art for both of the promos, I feel, looks better than the promo art. But that's just my opinion, and art is subjective. So, the best part about this card is the will production effect, where will does not cease to exist, right? And the reason that is the best part is because it's usable in Nyarlathotep. So this card's very good in Nyar, and you'll probably play it in Nyar. And if you're unfamiliar with what Nyar does, is Nyar brings out stones that then get rid of themselves at the end of your turn. So with all your stones getting rid of themselves, you can filter all the mana into Violet Maria Bella. And you can also do the same thing with Isis's will. So if you somehow pop off with Isis and do not kill your opponent, you can put all your fire mana into Violet and Maria Bella and have it for the following turn, which is quite good. The other thing is, if you produce enough fire will, she will also just kill your opponent for you. So she is technically a win con as well. She has fire breathing. So, also Eternal. Eternal's kind of hard to deal with. You get like Gradius and stuff like that can deal with her, but can be a little rough. Got some Deku Eri vibes or Tanjiro Nezuko. A little bit. I could see that. Definitely get more Eri vibes from Maria Bella, but yeah, Violet and Maria Bella, good card in Nyar. I don't think you play it in any other deck. But that's that. Okay, Arthur. I really like Machina's design, by the way. From what we've seen so far. Looking forward to the other cards. Arthur, 7 mana quick cast. 2 mana, or 7 mana. 2 mana quick cast, 7/7, my bad. Enter, draw 2, put a card from your hand on top of your deck. Powerful effect, especially for what Machina is doing. Machina has certain cards that allow you to top check, and then, so if he is ordered, you can look at the top card of your deck at any time. If he isn't, this allows you to stack your deck, which will allow you to get other effects off of like top checks and stuff like that. Okay. Pay blue, discard this card, draw 3, put 2 from your hand on top of your deck. Play this ability only if you control a J ruler. So you get a Brainstorm effect. Brainstorm is a very powerful Magic card. Magic the Gathering card. It's played in Legacy. I don't know. We'll have to see what Deus Ex Machina gets. But I don't know how powerful Brainstorm will be in Force. Part of this this is her now feel old yet. Part of this with Arthur, hang on, I'm just checking my phone real quick. Part of this with Arthur is he also can just be a 7/7. He produces mana if he's revved and like machines you control get destroyed. And we don't know what Lancelot does yet, but he also applies Lancelot's revs. So depending on what Lancelot does, like it might be relevant to Revolution him, right? Because he gives himself +2/+2, right? So he's a 9/9 when he's revved, which like 2 mana 9/9. Again, last 2 mana like flash card we played was like Ava, right? For like Priscilla, like the last big stat one was Ava. She was just like a 10/10 in Cherry. So yeah, very good card selection plus card. He always plays card neutral in terms of like cards in hand, and then he plays himself onto the board, so he's just card value and his stat line is large. So he's a good card. Sucks that he says when a machine you control is destroyed instead of sent to the or banished. Yeah. Just maybe when he does damage, you draw 2 cards. Just feeling heavy drawing abilities potentially. Yeah. Yeah, it being off the banish would probably be a little too strong. They like to do this thing where whenever we have any card that has a sack outlet, something gets broken. So got to draw to get to that Teeter win con. That is true. But yeah, anyway, I really like the card. I'm pretty sure Machina will play it. You might even play this card outside of that. Like, there might be, like, Feasting might play this card. Like, it's just decent. Like, it is very decent. It's very, like, it is just good at what it is doing. It's high stat line. It's just good. Deus Ex Machina enters the game of gods. Okay. Instant speed. Search your deck for a machine. Reveal it. Put it into your hand. Shuffle your deck. Reveal the machine resonator from your hand. If you do, destroy target J-Res. If its total cost is equal then or less than the total cost of the revealed card. So, this is a destruction effect. This card goes value positive for a single mana, which is outside of 0 mana, the lowest mana cost in the game. Depending on what machines we have, it might be even better. We'll see. And then, spoiler alert, a little bit further, Tidor's gimmick. This is a machine, and this just says search for a machine, not a machine J-Res. So if you need Tidor's gimmick, or potentially other random cards that are also machines, you can get it with DEM enters the game of gods. So this just finds finds pieces, right? Whatever you need, and then also kills whatever your opponent plays. Which is quite strong. Field presence is becoming a lot more prevalent. So being able to interact with the field is also becoming a lot more prevalent. It only hits J-Reses, so it can't hit like additions or anything like that. It's not entities. However, hitting J-Reses is still very strong because of order, etc., etc. I think this card is very powerful. I think you play 4 of it. Like, hands down. I don't see why you wouldn't. So yeah, Guinevere. This card is absurd. I love this card. So the thing with Guinevere, Guinevere cannot be interacted with. Okay, so if you go second and you have the coin, your Guinevere cannot be interacted with by your opponent on your turn. Now, what do I mean by that? If you might be confused. So when you order her, right, she'll immediately become a machine. And then she will hit the board because she cannot be canceled since you ordered her. And then she is now on the board with her continuous effect activated, which says your opponent, since she is a machine, has to pay 3 more to play spells, which is any card. Spells are all cards. All cards are spells, except rulers. or non-will activate abilities. No deck can interact with this. Not even Carlina. This card is free. Everything you do off this card is free. Your opponent cannot do anything. Literally nothing. And then you get this enter effect to get whatever the top card of your deck is. Assuming that your deck is all Guinevere hits. Laughs in Virgil? What do you mean? Virgil can't do anything. It's an activate ability. Yeah, this card's very good. Your opponent has to proactively kill it, which means the turn that they do kill it, they have less mana to do other stuff. And the turn it gets played, you get a free card. Can't you judge Dante and sack Dante for Virgil? Yeah? Yeah, and activate abilities. She's untouchable. You can't even, you can't violet this. Like, Guinevere is, like, actually untouchable. I cannot think of a single card or interaction that can touch her. Well, she's very strong. Especially if, like, the card you rip is, like, something insane. Just means you can't play off turn, which is a big thing in this game. Correct. Playing off turn is huge in Force of Will. Not being able to play on your opponent's turn or in your, like, untap step. I guess you could play in your untap step with Guinevere, but, like, not being able to interact on your opponent's turn. Very rough. Especially when this deck is the deck that also got a Lab Maniac. So it's probably some dumb combo deck. So you can just be like, alright, Guinevere, you can't... Are you going to kill it for 4 mana? That's rough, buddy. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Very powerful card. Very weak, right? On your opponent's turn, it does nothing. It's just a 4/4, which is very easily dealt with. There are plenty of cards that deal with a 4/4. Like, even you just saying Virgil earlier, depending on what card I rip off the top with her, right? Because you're ripping it off, like your Machina, you know exactly what the top card of your deck is. So unless it just doesn't meet one of these criterias, you're getting it. Well, like you said, like if you have Virgil, I'm not killing your Virgil. Depends on what my card is. So you can go to your turn and just shoot this with Virgil. It's fine. That might happen. I think. Can Virgil hit J Resonators? I think he can. It's whatever. I'm assuming he can. But he can ping it. He can kill it. But it just being an uninteractable turn 1, get a second free card. Very strong. Very strong. If I go Guinevere and my top card is Deus Ex Machina enters the Game of Gods, I get to kill your Virgil. And I get a machine. Right? Very powerful card. Moving on. The Lab Maniac. Good. So this is Laboratory Maniac, which is again a magic card. He has at the beginning of your turn draw a card. Highly irrelevant. He's blue, and 1. His rev effect is if you would lose the game attempting to draw a card from an empty deck during your draw phase, you win instead. That is the only time, by the way, that you can ever lose the game due to deck out, is if you try to draw during your draw phase. Any other time you draw from an empty deck, you do not lose. When he enters, you can pay 2 and take an extra turn. If he is a machine, which he will be if you're Machina, you can pay 1 instead. So for 4 mana, you can take an extra turn after you rev him. Draw extra cards, stuff like that. So Machina is very quickly looking to be some kind of dumb combo deck. The Machina looking not Machina guy, yes. Yeah, so we're slowly coming to the Machina is just a, like, dumb combo deck type thing, and you just draw your entire deck and then win the game with Tidor after taking a bunch of turns. Is the idea. Because the idea is you'll just cycle through turns, right? So, that is the assumption. That is what Tidor does. We don't have all the Machina cards, so I can't say what the deck will eventually turn into, but with us having Guinevere, with us having Titor, and then with us having Titor's Gimmick, which is an addition, but is a machine and has this opponent, your opponent pays 1 more to play spells during your turn effect, if you're Machina. It's very likely you're just trying to play a, hey, you literally cannot interact with me on my turn type deck. And then just win off of the back of Tidor. Now, keep in mind, Tidor has to be revved in order for you to get the Lab Maniac effect, which means Guinevere will not be revved, which means unless there is another way to make her a machine, she'll only have an extra 1 tax on top of everything, which is still a lot, but it's not the 3 that makes stuff practically unplayable. Okay? So do you keep that in mind. Tidor's Gimmick, by the way, you mill 2 cards. Easiest way for you to run out of cards in your deck, right? And then for each Machine Resonator, you get a 2/2 token. It's for free blocks, other stuff like that. Free dam off of Arthur. Etc., etc. Okay? So that's kind of what we're working with. That's kind of what we have for Machina so far. I think that's actually all we have for Machina so far, are these 5 cards. So this is kind of all we know. Moving on. Jamimi. I might be speeding this up a little bit. I do have to end at pretty much exactly 7, which is in an hour, my time. Doing something with my grandfather, but I'll try, and I will get through everything. I will not just randomly dip. Jamimi Divine Power. So 2 mana, 7/7, good stat line, has Pierce, has villains. Whenever a Mimi tribe enters the field under your control, this card deals damage to target J-Res equal to the attack of that Mimi tribe. This does use LKI. Okay. If this card would deal more damage than the target's capacity this way, it deals the rest to your opponent. So it's kind of like a mini Pierce effect. So it's free damage. Do you keep in mind that effect does... I just realized something. But that effect hits everything, like including your board, and it requires you to target. So if your opponent doesn't have anything, when you play a Mimi tribe, you have to target one of your own things. If you do kill it, though, it will deal the damage to your opponent. That is prevalent. So even if you like kill your own Chamimi or something else, if you like overkill it, you will deal that damage to your opponent. Revolution, she gains precision. Why are they doing precision Pierce? Actually, I hate this game. Enter, you can reveal X Mimi tribes with no abilities and total cost X you own from outside the game and put them into the field, where X is the number of resonators you control. Keep in mind, this X Mimi tribes with total cost X or less, it is not total cost. If that makes sense. So like if I have 3 resonators, I can reveal 3 Mimi tribes that each have a total cost of X or less. So I can reveal 3 3s, like 3 drop Mimis. It's not 3 1-drops in order to go up to 3, right? So, very prevalent effect. I believe we only have 1 currently, which is this one, which is a 3-drop. It's an 11/11. But prevalent effects, right? And it'll trigger all of these. So she's kind of like a board clear. And when we get to one of the cards from today, we'll talk about how you can do it at instant speed, which is very cool. So she's very powerful, particularly with the card that got spoiled today. Just like as a sorcery speed, like player type deal, I probably wouldn't. It's kind of meh. Same kind of thing with Mimi Tribe Brave. You're not playing this in your main deck more than likely. You're probably just playing them in the sideboard in order to rip them out with Chamimi. Rudra. I talked about this with Agony already. Rudra nukes your opponent's board instead of nuking their life. However, he is in green, and he applies Agony's Revolution. Him being in green makes him better. Him nuking the board gives it diversity in what they're doing, but it doesn't make him more deadly. A lot of the times, there are very few decks that swarm currently. Like, Rudra would be very good against, like, Tidor's Edition that we just went over, right? Killing those 2/2 machines. But there are very few decks that do that as, like, their main way to win the game. A lot of the time, stat lines are a lot higher. So he'll hit for 2, and then he'll hit for 4. Those are the 2 hits that he'll do until it goes back to your next turn, which we've already kind of talked about it. If it goes back to your turn and that turn ends, you're kind of winning the game already, because they haven't dealt with a Rudra for 3 turns at that point. Same kind of concept with Agony, right? However, again, you can't really play it early. It's not something you want to play early. This is not a safe play, like we talked about with Ayu, how Ayu is an incredibly safe turn 1. Rudra is nowhere near a safe turn 1. It is a very unsafe turn 1, as a matter of fact. So playing Rudra early isn't that great, because he has low impact. So he has high impact if left alive, but he has low impact immediately. And then, if answered early, which he probably will be, he's very bad late. So it's not good to play early, and it's bad to play this card late, therefore this card isn't great. Okay? Same kind of thing with Agony. They both fall in the same category. That's Rudra. Shiva enters the game of gods. Okay. I don't know how I feel about this card. I truly do not. A lot of it is going to rely on this card right here. Partially due to what other these we get. Will we get one for 2 drops? Will we get one for 1 drops? I want to know. If we have a slew of them from 1 to 3, that makes Chamimi a lot better, which makes Shiva enters the game of God a lot better. What do I mean by that? If Chamimi is revved, so you have Shiva out, she is a 9/9. If this effect is active, she is an 11/11, which means you need 1900 more stats to make this card draw 3 cards. 1900 divided by 3, right, puts everything having approximately, what is it, 1800? It's just 1800 divided by 3, right? So it's 6. Means everything needs about 6/6 in stats. If they have +2/+2 from this, and +2/+2 from Shiva, then that means they only need to be 2 2s. If you get it down to 10, like 2 resonators, then they need to be 10 10s. But 400 is already covered by this and Shiva's rev, which means that at that point, they only need to be 6/6s. So if they only need to be 6/6s, and this is a 3-drop 11/11, odds are, if there is a new, like a vanilla 2-drop Mimi Tribe, they will have the relevant stat line, right? So again, this card being good is highly dependent on how easy it is to get to this 3k. If you can proc this 3k a lot, this card is absurdly powerful. If you can't proc it a lot, this card is just a better Zero enters, or not Zero enters the game of gods. Zero's Awakening, I think is what the card is. Just gives J Resonators you control Eternal until the end of turn. It's 1 light mana. This gives a stat boost and Eternal. Plus, if you're Shiva, even if you do not draw 3 cards, this is still probably going to kill something if you have literally anything in play. Right? Because even if you just have a Chamimi, even if it's not revved, that's still 9/9. And 900 can hit a lot of stuff. If it is revved, it's 11/11, and that hits pretty much everything. It's also J's. It also targets J resonators. It's a very powerful card. If you draw 3, It's absurdly powerful. Just the amount that you play is going to be highly prevalent in how often you can proc this part of the effect. If you can proc it all the time, it's a 4-0. If you're procking it 50% of the time, you're looking at 2, maybe 3, max. Okay? Let Shiva's enter the Game of Gods. Shiva's Wind Aura. I don't like this card. I don't think you play this card. My reasoning for it. It is not quick cast. It gives flying, which is a significantly worse keyword than swiftness, which the Flame Aura gives. And if you have played the Flame Aura on a card, you cannot play the Wind Aura on it. Which means it's just a 2 mana plus 600 flying, and then it replaces itself. Instead of 0 mana, swiftness. I would even play swiftness for 2 mana if I could give it to literally anything I wanted. So I do not think Shiva's Wind Aura is good. I think you play Flame Aura. I do not think you play Wind Aura. Okay? We're almost there. We're in darkness. Amadeus. Beloved Fallen Angel. 5 mana. 30/30. They're loving to print these like absurd stat lines. I love it so much. If damage would be dealt to you, it is dealt to this card instead. That is a powerful effect. Enter, your opponent discards 2 cards. It plays for +2 value if you count bodies in play as inherent value. As you play this card, you may rest any number of recovered dark spheres. You pay black less to play this card for each dark sphere. Revolution gives it a God's Art. Keep in mind, Erythropia, the Darkstone, only refreshes the God's Art of rulers. It does not refresh the God's Art of J rulers that are fallen angels. That was the first thing I went and looked at. So you will only get this effect once unless they print another card that resets God's Arts. Okay? Pay 0, put an order card your opponent controls into their ruler area as a ruler. Remove all resonators your opponent controls from the game. Your opponent cannot play cards that share a name with a card removed this way. As long as this card is in the field, players cannot chase to this ability. The God's Art is good. Don't get me wrong. However, it is an activate ability, which are getting significantly worse. It is a God's Art, which has a cancel already in the form of 7th Boon. And its effect is good, but not super oppressive, right? So like this card has no inherent protection. We're all on the same page with that. I'm like 90. If I was a gambling man, Dante is going to have a green sphere that gives your J ruler barrier. I'm calling it now. It's going to happen. It exists. Do I know the set? Absolutely not. But if it doesn't have that, this card is like turbo shit. Like, it plays for so much value. You get... It probably doesn't cost a lot. Like, depending on how many dark spheres you get out and how quick they are to get out. Also, if you can main deck them, like, it just gets that... Like, it gets better like that. But again, it has no inherent protection. And most decks are not resonator based, right? Like, this is powerful to keep as a response option. This isn't like a play it and fucking ship it type thing. Like, this would be a case of you're like, man, this Violet player can Baja me next turn. So you have to Amadeus and hold your God's Art. Or maybe my opponent's going to try and do a Priscia, like, chain of Priscia's Big Show. The alternative Priscia. They're going to do, like, a chain at the end of my turn. I have to hold my God's Art. It's a very powerful tool for that. But it's very weak, inherently. It doesn't feel safe, is kind of what I'm getting at. It's a bomb. It's a very powerful bomb. In Limited, this card is absurd. Absolutely absurd. But we have cards that discard 2 cards. Maybe they're just in shittier decks. That is a potential. Maybe they just don't do enough outside of them also discarding cards. But typically, because of how value intensive FOW is, this effect is not that powerful, especially nowadays. Cards also aren't random. If it was random, it would be better, naturally. So, I think Amadeus is good. I think you play it in Dante. How many you play is very dependent on how many dark spheres you can have access to in the early turns of the game. Because you're trying... when you play FOW, you're trying to play as cost-effective as possible. If you can play this for 0, starting from like turn 3, even turn 4, very powerful. It's very cost-effective. But if you can't play this for 0 until like turn 6 or 7, very bad. Very not playable. You'd be playing it for 2 and you'd have to be revving it. Otherwise it'll get countered. Cool. That's my thoughts on Amadeus. Dante enters the game of gods. Probably the most splashable game of gods card, I think. Trying to think. Maybe. Target J-Res gets +4/+4, Flying, Drain, and Bane. It does not give Barrier. If it gave Barrier, it would be another way to protect Amadeus, which would be nice. Pay 500, 1,000, or 1,500 life. Draw a card for each 500 life paid this way. This card's very powerful, value-wise, when paired with an Amadeus in play that takes all the damage you take, right? Because you can pay 1,500 and you're kind of protected behind your Amadeus. Which means you get to draw 3 cards. And then you can also gain all that life back, which is kind of cool. Oh, it also gives Pierce. He didn't add Pierce. James! James! It also gives Pierce! So, it's a very powerful first effect, right? Gives you life. Practically unblockable. Trades 1 for 1, right? If you give something Bane. And then you pay life into it in order to draw a card. So like typical 1-drop stat line, right? You're looking at like 4/4. So like if you're trading 1-drops around, like you gain 800. So like your opponent has a card. Your opponent has a creature, a resonator. You have a resonator. Your opponent is attempting to kill your resonator combat-wise, or you have blocked, right? And their thing will not die. You now make your thing an 8/8, which could potentially save it, right? Like your thing might not die because it's now an 8/8. Even if it does die, it now has Bane, which will make sure that it kills the other thing. And now that it's an 8/8, you gain 800 life, which allows you to pay 1,000 and not feel too bad about it, right? Because like you're only really going to 3,800. So, in that sense, Dante enters the game of gods, paying 1,000 life, right? In this theoretical trade, you have gone up. You've gone up a card to replace Dante enters the game of gods, and you draw another card to replace the resonator that you just lost. And you have now traded with your opponent's resonator, and you've gone value neutral on the resonators, but your opponent's gone value down. So this card is inherently value positive in any trade situation. And it only gets better the higher up you trade. And if you don't trade, your thing still lives, it's even better than that. So his Game of Gods is very strong. The issue that his Game of Gods has over the other Game of Gods effects is it does not do targeted destruction. Machina's does, Shiva's does, Odin's does, Kaguya's technically does. Loki's doesn't, but Loki's is really dumb. And then Alice's doesn't, but she can blink stuff. Okay? And she also, like, facilitates her own stuff, right? So, it is probably the most generically powerful Game of Gods effects. It is potentially very good in tempo-based matches. Becomes a lot worse if you need targeted destruction and your deck doesn't have it. I think you play 4 of this. I think you do. I do not know for sure. It's very similar to Keep the Faith. Keep the Faith just has the res modal instead of card advantage. So, but that's my thoughts on Dante enters the Game of Gods. Dante's Dark Wave. J-Resin is your opponent control, gain minus 400 until the end of turn, and then they gain -4/-4 for each Dark Sphere you control until end of turn. Really just depends on how easy it is to get Dark Spheres. Outside of just ordering off of a Dante. Like, -8/-8 is a lot. And it's not instead. So you'll get the -4/-4, and then if you're Dante and you have a Dark Sphere, it's just -8/-8. If you have 2 Dark Spheres, it's -12/-12. So on and so forth, right? So, at 1 Dark Sphere, you're killing most things. At 2, you're killing pretty much everything. Outside of, like, the, 30/30s, 40/40s, etc., etc. So, I'm not going to say it's an issue, because if this was instant speed, I think this card would be broken. Like, unironically. It would be like instant speed Final Battle, almost. And again, this is all inherent on how easy it is to get Dark Orbs. Unironically, indeed. But again, all inherent on how easy it is to get Dark Spheres. If it's only through Dante, you might play 1 or 2 of this as like a tech option. Just because it is powerful. It's a board wipe. It's a 1-mana board wipe. Which is still strong. And since it's game state, your opponent can't play anything on your turn, which is strong. Really depends, right? Dark Charlotte. Okay. So this card's kind of funny. 1 mana. She gains +2/+2 for each Dark Sphere you control, so she'll be a 6/6 because you get one when Dante flips. Whenever this card attacks, if it has 5 or more keyword abilities, you may search your deck for a card named Excalibur Fallen and play it without paying its cost. If you do, shuffle your deck. If she is revved, you gain Swiftness and Barrier from Light. Okay? It's not just Barrier, it's Barrier from Light specifically. Now, keywords. We went over this because she says keyword abilities. I want to go down there. 44, page 44. Okay. Keywords without keyword abilities attributed to them, blah, blah, blah. The following is a list of keywords that are not keyword abilities. Tails, Villains, Limit Break, Passion, Calmness, Dragon Emblem, Will of Hope, Will of Despair. That means every other keyword in the game is considered a keyword ability. Where is she? Get out of here. Okay. You get out of here. Revolution is a keyword ability. Swiftness is a keyword ability. Barrier, even though it's just light, it's a keyword ability. We're going to skip over to Dante real quick. Force Command is a keyword ability. Enter is a keyword ability. Keep in mind how the orders work is all this effect text goes onto the card that is ordered. Which means when you order Dark Charlotte, you will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 keyword abilities. And haste, which means that as soon as she attacks, on the turn she is flipped, you get to play Excalibur Fallen. Which we'll get into in a second. I guess it's prevalent enough in the discussion of how powerful that card is to play. So it's 2 mana, right? Black, darkness, darkness, instant speed. You name a resonator, you destroy all resonators your opponent controls, J resonators, that share a name with that card. If you are Dante, it's also instant. It's instant speed. And then you can look at your opponent's hand and discard all cards with that named card as well. So if you play this on your turn 1, or 0, or whatever, your turn 1, and you can attack, if your opponent hasn't played any resonators, you can cast Excalibur Fallen immediately, play it for free, and just call whatever resonator you don't want in their hand. So like if they're playing like Violet, you're just like, okay, attack, and they don't kill her somehow, call Atomic Bahamut, rips all their balls out of their hand. You're playing against Feasting, call Melfi, rips all their Melfis out of their hand. Call Prisia, rips all their Prisias out of their hand, etc., etc. All the time, every time it's Garyon, you can call Garyon, rip all the Garyons out of their hand. You can call Ayu, rip all the Ayus out of their hand. You can call any resonator. I'll have to double check on this one, but I'm pretty sure resonator tokens count as resonator cards because the cards are actually printed for them. So if you want to like hit tokens, I think you can call token names too. But the main thing is just being able to like rip out of your opponent's hand. The other thing, moving into just this card is just good on its own. 2 mana, like Cabal Therapy, but also a board wipe. It's like really good. It can't hit everything. It's like it can't hit chance or anything like that, right? It only hits resonators. But it just gets rid of them, like everywhere. Hit elect though. Put them all in your opponent's grave, I guess. I don't know. It's just, it is a strong effect. It is a decently strong effect. Moving on. Dark Sphere of Asmodeus. This is one of the Dark Spheres. You can make her an 8/8 instead of a 6/6 if you get this Dark Sphere when you do the Dante things. They also have Eternal. If all the Dark Spheres have Eternal, they're just going to be hard to get rid of, which is nice for the deck because you want all the Dark Spheres out for like Amadeus, stuff like that. So, decent. We'll see what the other ones do. I'm assuming like if this one gives like stats, again, they're going to give like keywords. Like there'll be a red one that gives swiftness, there'll be a green one that gives like barrier, there'll be a light one that gives, I don't fucking know, something. I'm assuming there's just one of each color. We talked about Excalibur Fallen. Tears of Amadeus. Darkness, darkness, quick cast. Pay 1 less to play this if you control a J ruler. Your opponent banishes X for the resonators where X is the number of Dark Spheres you control. You have a lot of removal already, so I don't know how good this is going to be. But again, really dependent on how many Dark Spheres you can get out. If people are like swarming or stuff like that, or this wouldn't really be swarm. This would be more like your opponent plays like 2 or 3 big threats. If you just have like a couple Dark Spheres, you can just make your opponent banish everything off. Costs, yeah, I'd do it for 2. It costing 1 is just nice. So, okay card. Depends how many Dark Spheres you get in limited. It'd potentially be a limited bomb. Okay, the rulers. We kind of talked about this already. I'll just talk about their like flip sides real quick. I'll just get like each one out. Wait, what? Oh, I opened the second tab. Okay. And we can just talk about like what their flips look like. So Deus Ex Machinas, you can look at the top card of your deck at any time, and the ordered card gains machine. So we've seen why it's prevalent for like Guinevere. We'll see if that also works for other cards, like if it matters for other cards. The peek at the top card of your deck, like super prevalent. Like both of these effects are incredibly prevalent for Guinevere, but we haven't really seen them be required or super effective for other cards yet. So we'll just have to wait on what else we get. Shiva, ordered card gains J resonators you control get +2/+2. It's just a stat increase. That's all it is. His Shiva stuff relies on stats. So like it's nice, but it's not like great. Alice, you get a regalia of whatever attribute that you don't already have. And the ordered card will gain +X/+X, where X is the number of regalia you control. I always forget this text is on this card. I use like a 9/9, I guess, when you have all 5. Dante, you can reveal a dark sphere you own from outside the game that doesn't share a name with other dark spheres and put it into play. Okay, those are what they do on their orders. All right, I'm not going to really talk about what I think about if they're good or bad. Like, it's kind of hard because they're just built within the subtext of their decks, right? So we won't be talking about that. Dark Alice. Okay, so Dark Alice is light and dark. She is a villain's. However, if you are playing Alice, you can play up to 4 copies of her, and she has tails. And she has tails instead of villains in every zone, all zones. This is minus outside the game, because outside the game is not a zone, as long as your ruler is Alice. Alright. She has an enter. Look at your opponent's hand, choose a resonator from among them and remove it from the game. Revolution, if you do not control a darkness regalia, you get a darkness regalia, and then you look at your opponent's hand, choose a non-resonator, and remove it from the game. And darkness regalia you control, gain target J-res, gains -6/-6 until end of turn. Okay. So you can play this in like villains decks, right? Like you can play this in Odin, you can play this in Loki, and you can also get the proc effect. I think this card is very powerful for a Loki style deck. Not too sure about Odin, maybe, but in like a Loki type deck, which you're already ripping cards that decks already kind of control, and you already play Loki Enters the Game of Gods, which is going to mana fix for you and allow you to play this at instant speed. Plus you can rev her. Very powerful. The other thing with it is because she creates the darkness regalia, she'll just give something -6/-6. A lot of the times you can use that to kill something. It really just depends on what your opponent has on, like, in play. If you have already created a darkness regalia, this second part of the enter to rip a card from their hand is not dependent on the first. They're 2 separate sub effects. So even if you already have a darkness regalia and you don't create it, like you can't, you still look at your opponent's hand and you still remove a non-resonator on the revolution enter. In Alice, she allows you to create 2 regalia on play, right? One from Alice's enter and one from her own enter, which is nice. It allows you to potentially go up to 3 regalia on turn 2. Which it's just good to have more regalia for that deck. Do you play 4? I don't know. Part of the issue for that, it's the enter effects are very nice. This card is, in a sense, also incredibly safe, if that makes sense. Like, a lot of Alice's cards are incredibly safe. And so we'll kind of have to see if you play it in Alice. I think you do, and just kind of deal with the mana being a little awkward. But again, like a deck like Loki playing this, where you can mana fix and play this at instant speed and like rip, is absurdly powerful. I do enjoy also what they're doing with this villains and tails thing. It also kind of makes me think that they might do something with like Virgil, because we know there's going to be Virgil chasing darkness. Like, it's one of the names on one of the card like flavor texts. So I'm assuming they might do like a thing like Virgil is a tails, because he's against Dante, I think. I'm not a lore guy. So this is all just like subtext from flavor text. They might make Virgil like a tails naturally, but he can be played as a villains if you're playing Dante, right? Something like that. Same kind of concept. So I think that might exist. Value-wise, this card is insane. It plays, so like you play, it has potentially a kill and then 2 discards. So it plays +2. So it inherently plays, so it plays +2 if everything gets full value, which is a lot. If not everything gets full value, it plays +1, like card wise, and it plays +1 tempo-wise, because you also get the board. So it's +2 tempo-wise, or no, +3 if you include tempo with full value, and then, or no, +3, yeah, +3 if you include tempo with full value, +2 if you just include, or +1 if you just include value. So, very strong card. Very strong. Stat line's a little weak, but this is what it is. Tales of Fantasia. Okay. This is like her ult, I guess, is the best way to describe these cards. All of the rulers have like a 3-mana spell that, or chant, that is their 3 colors. And the 4 new rulers are getting it. The 4 rulers from last set have it. So this is Alice's. She has to pay her full thing. Instant speed, reveal the top X cards of your deck, where X is the number of regalia you control. Choose up to 1 resonator, chant, and addition from among them, and put them into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your deck if any order. If you are Alice, you reveal the top X of your cards of your deck, where X is double the number of regalia you control. You choose up to the same thing from among them, and then you play them without paying their cost. If you choose, you can choose alternative cards, if you want, but you still have to follow the rules of 1 chant, 1 addition, 1 resonator. Okay. I don't know how good this card is going to be in New Frontiers. Part of the reason for that is because we don't have the duels. Remember, it's kind of difficult to have tricolor mana. IU kind of helps with that, as well as Amadeus Crystal helping with that. So it is a lot easier for Alice to potentially have tricolor mana than it is for other rulers. Moving on. This card is very, very good in Wanderer. Part of the reason this card is very good in Wanderer, and why I think Alice has the potential to be very good in Wanderer, is you get to play the 0-mana regalia. They don't have an attribute, which is fine, but a lot of the cards are not relying on attribute. They're relying on just number of regalia. So, with you being able to play any amount of regalia, all these 0-mana regalia, stuff like that, Tales of Fantasia becomes a lot more powerful. You also have perfect mana in Wanderer. So, I think this card is potentially very strong for Wanderer, specifically. The other thing is, because you play them without paying their cost, I'd have to look. I'm not going to bother with it right now, but I don't know if you can play Final Stance off of this, because Final Stance you do have to have the other 2 things in order to play it. So I don't know if playing it without paying their cost allows you to forego additional costs outside of total cost. I don't think it does, so I don't think you can play Final Stance off of this, but I'm pretty sure you can play Alice's World off of this, which means this card just allows you to take extra turns. Taking extra turns is very powerful. So there is a chance that you can play some nutty Tales of Fantasia deck, because there's a lot of cards. Like top X, where X is double the number of regalia. Like if you play like Hydromonica, Excalibur, Judgment, IU, get another regalia off of IU, you're already at 6. Like 6 for X for Tales of Fantasia, right? If you just play more regalia, doubles each time. And this, it's a 3 for 1, right? Because you're assuming you're getting full value. So I think Tales of Fantasia is very good for Wanderer. I don't know how good it'll be in New Frontiers. We'll see. You probably still play 1 or 2 of it, just because like you'll eventually have access to the mana. So, but, interesting card. Power of Zeus. I hate this card. This card's really shit. Combat tricks like aren't good anymore. They have to do other stuff in addition to being a combat trick. This is only a combat trick. The other thing with Power of Zeus, it's a 2-mana combat trick. We haven't played like 2-mana combat tricks in years. Choose one, then choose one X times again, X blah 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 blah, all this dumb stuff. What this text is here for is because it allows you to keep adding this text on. You can target different things with the +6/+6, or you can target the same thing with the +6/+6. That's really what this is all there for. It is not worded great, but it is what it is. Again, it's a combat trick. This card is terrible. I don't think you play it in any deck ever, but it is what it is. It's what it is. Okay. 2 promo cards, and let us see if Mr. James has updated this. He is not. Okay. So I'm going to go to Discord. I don't know why I'm just opening it. We'll just like we'll go to Discord. We'll go to spoiled cards. Oh, whoopsie. There we go. Something looked a little weird. That should be good, though. Okay. Whoops. Alright, these were the cards for the day. I'm going to talk about that 1 second. I hope you can see this okay. If you can't, I apologize. But Shoot the Mimi. It's green and red. It is quick cast if you are Shiva. You put a Mimi tribe from your hand into the field. At the next end of turn, its controller banishes it. Because it is an next end of turn trigger, you can play it at the end of your opponent's turn in order to get full value, right? So like you can move to your turn, and then it'll still be in play because it won't trigger until the next end of turn if you activate it in the end step after that trigger has occurred. In addition, that Resonator gains swiftness until end of turn, and you apply its revolution abilities until end of turn. So this allows you to play Chamimi at instant speed, which makes Chamimi a combat trick, in addition to being just removal. Because it allows you to play your Chamimi, get your things from outside of the board because you're applying the revolution, and then that allows you to shoot stuff because of Chamimi, right? You banish the Chamimi, but you get to keep all the other things she brings out, which allows you to get a lot of board presence. Plus, if you do this on your turn, you can give her swiftness. Okay? It also allows you to play something, apply its rev, and then play another card and rev it. Which means you can have 2 revolutions at the same time, which might be very prevalent. Maybe you play this, get a Chamimi, and then you play another Chamimi from your hand and rev that too. And you went from 1 Chamimi, getting 1 thing because you only had 1 Resonator, the Chamimi, and then it gets the 1 Chamimi card. You play the other Chamimi that's revved, and now you get to get 2 things. And now you have 5 things. It's a lot of things. God damn, this streamer is sexy. Oh. No, sir, you're sexy. By the way, everybody, say thank you to Inhalode for the wonderful database we've been using all of tonight. He's also slowly making the deck builder. He is the cutest man alive. But so Shoot the Mimi is very powerful. Depending on what other Mimi tribes we get that are in the main deck, determines how many of this card you play. Because if you do not play, if you only play Chamimi, this card becomes very bad. Because there's only the 1. But if you have like another thing outside of Chamimi that you can play like at 4, like you would Chamimi, then that's 8 targets. So you could easily play this as like a 1 or a 2 of, just to give them like quick cast effectively. You're only here for the sex appeal. Oh no. What have I done? What tank top have I worn today? Okay. Rigveda. Rigveda, however you pronounce this. So there was some discourse about this card in the Discord today and a little bit on the Facebook group and all that good stuff. So there are a couple camps with this. There's the camp that this is the best card FAO has ever printed. That is the camp that I am in. I will tell you that that is the camp I am in right now. The more I looked at this card after reading it, the more broken it got. There is another camp that is kind of on the it's a good card, but it's relegated to Shiva, which means it's potentially worse. Which is a fine take to have. However, the thing you need to keep in mind is that since we haven't had tournaments yet, we don't know the competitive viability of certain things. Rigveda is almost powerful enough to make Shiva tier 1. It's very close. Shiva has some other tools, and Rigveda is very close to just skyrocketing it to tier 1. Which is where one of the takes of it doesn't matter that it's only relegated to one deck come from, because even if Rigveda is only relegated to one deck, how powerful Rigveda is in that one deck makes it absurd. Like, absurdly broken. So, the argument for that has occurred in the past that I want to bring up is take Shahrazad, right? Shahrazad was practically a tier 0 format. The only other real deck, that was around at that time was Keurig. Because it was an aggro deck. It could potentially go fast enough, depending on like the player, what everyone drew, like the play lines, etc., right? Shahrazad got 3 cards banned, 2 of which could not be played outside of Shahrazad because they were dog shit. And those 2 are Ava, which was green, 5/5. It gained +1/+1 for each thing that was flipped in your grimoire. Each story. Ava, and she also had quick cast because you were Shahrazad. So Ava was, at most, a 10/10 for 2 at instant speed. Again, different times, different format, right? We don't really care about 10/10s at instant speed anymore, right? But in every other deck, she was only a 5/5. She had no potential to be anything more than a 5/5 at sorcery speed in any other deck other than Shahrazad. The other one was Evil Genie. Evil Genie was a 7/7 that had 3 different legend effects. Legend being based on how many things you have flipped in your Shahrazad, like, extra deck. Evil Genie also got banned. People also think Evil Genie is broken, because it is. Evil Genie is a broken card. At the time, it was incredibly broken, because it was inherently a tempo +2 and a value +1, all on its own, which is very strong. And that's where people are coming from with the Rigveda argument. Yes, it is only allowed in Shiva. However, what Rigveda does is it is not only a cancel, it is not only a stifle, it is also a removal for everything. It's not even just J resonators. It's a non-magic stone entity. I get Order makes it so that things can't be canceled, so they will get their automatic effects. However, Rigveda allows me to pay 1 to cancel that automatic effect if I so choose, or pay 1 to kill that card if I so choose. Or, if I have the mana, I can pay 2 to cancel that effect and kill that card. All on one card. Or, if we're later into the game, and we're trading chance, like spells, or we're playing cards that aren't uncancelable or anything like that, I can pay 2 to play my Rigveda, cancel your card, of which cancel spells are inherently fair, because they trade 1 for 1. This card trades more than 1 for 1. I pay 2 mana for this. Every cancel spell in the game right now, besides number 13, after you get to first 4 stones And then 7 stones costs 2 or more. I don't consider Welser a cancel spell. Plus, he technically costs 2. Rigveda costs 1 for a cancel. It costs 2 for a cancel and a kill. That's so powerful. That is absurdly powerful. If I have 3 mana, I might be able to play all 3. There are very few situations in which all 3 of these effects will apply simultaneously, but it could happen. But the main one to look at is you have the versatility of it being a singular mana to stop whatever you want. Anything. You stop anything. It stops everything in the game. Any spell, any effect, or you kill a card. Everything. Everything gets stopped. Your opponent judgments Dante, Rigveda the enter trigger. Kill the Dante. If you have the mana, do both. The other issue with Rigveda, inherently with how it's like working, right? If you pay 1 to cancel something, unless your opponent paid 0 for it, you're going to play mana neutral, right? So in order for your opponent to play around Rigveda at positive in any form, they would have to play a 0 mana card. If your opponent plays a card and they have something in play, and you pay 2, you now cancel something for 2, which is inherently what most counterspells are valued at. So you've canceled something for 2, you've traded 1 for 1, and then you kill something. You pay 2 mana to go +1 on interaction. So you've paid 2 mana, you go +1, and it also just... it just, like, kind of stops their turn. They can't play anything on 2, right? You'll always trade mana positive off Rigveda. Or at the very least, mana neutral. And if you trade mana neutral, you actually trade mana positive because you kill something, which took mana. It hits so many things. It is so strong. And like I said, I am of the opinion that this is the strongest card they've ever printed. I know that tends to, like, get said about a lot of cards, sometimes set to set, but that's just how power creep works. Right? The last 1 mana counterspell was Otherworld Dreams. While Otherworld Dreams was mana positive, it did not play value positive. It allowed your opponent to play another card. Sure, there was Severing Winds, but even then you're still playing value neutral off of these counterspells. Rigveda is the first counterspell that has ever existed that plays value positive and mana positive. It's broken. Like, hands down. So, that's my thoughts on Rigveda. I know not everyone will agree with me, but I wanted to try and explain why some people, myself included, think this card is bananas. And that's the reason. So, but that's it. That's it for spoilers. I believe that is everything. Right? These are just the promos. Yep. So that's everything we have. Rest of spoiler season should be fun. Pre-release starts 2 weeks from now. Right? Release is on the 25th, so 2 weeks, the 18th. Yep. So we'll get pre-release 2 weeks from now. We'll get to see some cards, and then the weekend after release, we get an online event. So it'll be a fresh deck, and then the weekend after that, we'll have another online event. So we'll kind of have some formats to go into, and I'll have a crap ton of content that I'll be able to put out. Woo! Woo! Yay! But, so anyway, that's all that. What I do plan on doing in the future, for this set, I will be making a top 10 like I did for the last set, as well as a full set review, where I'll just go over everything, much like I did for the last set. We'll see what I do in the future. The reason my streams have been so irregular as opposed to what they were when I first started and in the past was my schedule has been real like out of whack with moving and like some other stuff that I've been doing. So I'm trying to figure out like a schedule. When I do figure that out, I hope to try and stream at least once a week for Force of Will specifically. I will be streaming Lost Ark when that comes out on the 8th. Early access is on the 8th, and I have early access. So I will be streaming Lost Ark for like pretty much like 3-4 days, like straight. So if you're interested in that, feel free to come by and watch that, I guess. I love talking to people, so I'll talk to you if you show up in chat. I'll even answer Force of Will questions if you have those. After the set review and all that stuff, I'll just be doing like tournament reviews and things like that. No one's reached out to me for judging any of the events yet, so I'm not sure who's exactly doing all that stuff. If I end up doing it, then great. I would love to be all y'all's head judge. If we have any weird rulings with anything, I'll make a video about that, kind of like how Hanzo and the replacement effects were a wee bit confusing from the previous set. But thank you everyone so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it. It is almost 7 o'clock. It is 4 minutes to 7, which is when I needed to go anyway. So perfect timing. I will be uploading this to my YouTube as like a VOD. So if you missed it and you're watching on YouTube, hello YouTube. Hope you all have a great rest of your evening. I've been Charlie DeMille. Have a good one.